Somebody tell me something. Let's go with just a summary here of what's actually happening. Who wants to step up? Nate?
Well, there were going to be 7 pictures in the house of the interpreter that we would learn from, and these are numbers 3, 4, and 5.
Yep.
And there's the 2 boys, patience and passion, who he learns from, or who he learns about from the interpreter. And then there's the fire on the wall, which is one guy's pouring water on it, but the other guy's...
I love that image. I love that image.
Then there's the valiant man who all the other guys are trying to get in the door.
Yep.
Kick him out. And this guy gets his name written down and he pushes on the key and makes it in the door.
He makes it in the door. And I love it at the very last line of that, and I don't know if we'll get to that today, but come in, eternal glory, thou shalt win. So he went in and was clothed with such garments as they. Then Christian smiled and said, I think verily I know the meaning of this. Kind of interesting. Because if you look at this all the way through, it's like, hey, what does this mean? Hey, what does this mean? Hey, can we go in to discover it? I mean, you kind of see him growing throughout the chapter, and then he gets to the end, and it's like, hey, I think I got it. He's catching on. We kind of see that.
Sometimes you'll go to a verse in the Bible that you didn't really understand, or you couldn't reconcile with the understandings you have of other verses, and maybe when you were younger. I know this is the case for me. But then you go back to it after you're a little more mature, and you just read it once, and you're like,
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't even need to look at a study guide or a commentary on it. It's just plainly obvious.
And I think that's a summary of the Christian walk, isn't it? As we mature, we study, we pray, we hear preaching, we talk to our friends. We're living and communicating with God, and He's doing the same. And as this process is happening, almost unbeknownst to us, we grow in grace in all these things. As we continue to grow, we do just like you said, Nate. I mean, all of a sudden, things that weren't clear become more clear. Things that, couldn't be understood get understood. And that's just, I feel the same way. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm assuming that that's the way that's the normal path of Christianity, that we have to go ahead and wrestle with some things. Some of us, are, well, you know what, let's just start talking about it here. So, right at the beginning, in the dream, the interpreter takes him by the hand, takes him into the room, the 2 little kids there. Again, this whole thing is an analogy, right? Trying to explain things that might be more difficult for us to get the first time. Yeah, exactly. It's layers of an analogy. I would agree. It's layers. This whole book is an analogy, and this is an analogy within the analogy. So it's not that thing, but it's meant to go ahead and for us to help understand the thing. So 2 kids are shown, 2 little children. What are the names? Miss Gaby, what are the names? Passion and Patience. Now, would you want to name your kids Passion and Patience? I think I've seen the name Patience. I think I have. I was thinking about that. I'm thinking to myself, because, I get 130 different kids every year. So I see a lot of names, and then I see other names for kids. So I see a lot of names, and I'm pretty sure I have seen that. I don't think I've ever seen anybody called Passion. At least not as a first name. I might have seen it as a second name. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, because I can kind of picture that. All right. Interesting order of kids. Did you guys see that? The name of the eldest was Passion. Made me think about, well, let's talk about whose passion is first. Let's go ahead and identify that before I go on with that. So passion, what's the problem with Passion? What's his MO with this? Yeah, he's discontent. I think that's a good way. What else? Yeah, he exactly. Yeah, he wants it now. He doesn't want to go ahead, and he doesn't want to wait. He's interested, we might call this worldliness. The world system. What does the world system tell you?
If you want it, go get it.
Yeah, go get it now. Yeah, don't wait.
Later.
What? Wait? Why would you have to wait? Well, just go get it now. That's the world system. That is what the world says. And when you think about it, it kind of throws away one of, I think, the things that are not talked about enough, and that is sober-minded or self-control. No, you have to learn to control yourself. Yes, the flesh might go ahead and desire, the next new toy, the next new phone, the next new game, the next new car, the next new book, the next new movie, the next new restaurant that opened up in town, the next new clothing item, the next new. But don't worry, they're all circular. If you look at your clothing item, it was probably here about 15 years ago. Probably 30 years before, 15, 30 years before that. And they just come around, and now having a few years under my belt, I can look back and I think, oh yeah, I can remember that there, and I can remember the skinny ties, I remember fat ties, I remember skinny ties, or skinnier ties, and paisley ties and not paisley ties, and paisley ties and not paisley ties, and just little things like that. It's like, oh yeah, it just comes around and around.
We've even gone back around
to a flip phone, from a little phone to a big phone. Now back to it's just funny how it works, and we see that. And the world is a master. Satan is a master at going ahead and distracting us, doing anything and everything to distract us from staying on the path, staying on the following the truth. And this guy is always after. So this kind of shenanigans is very effective, right? People are distracted, so much so that every time they see something new, they have to take their eyes off of Christ just for a little bit to figure it out, and then they can try to find their way back. And so this constant pulling away and having to refocus, which slows things down, kind of gets you going in the wrong direction. Now, the name passion itself, if anybody, the idea of passion is not a bad thing, it's a good thing. To be hot for something, to be passionate about something is great. It just has to be in the right thing. It has to align with what the Lord would have. And that's, I like it when it goes down to an interpreter. So he said, these two lads are figures. Christians trying to figure it out. And he says, look, we'll have it now, this year, that is to say, in the world, men of this world. So worldliness. And what happens at the end of this? What's the result of this? What's the extent of having it now? It doesn't last. It doesn't even make it to the end. Because part of it is just you use it up. And so it doesn't, it's not something that we should be desirable for us. Now, notice, patience is the first. And when we talk about the Bible, a lot of times, it's always the first. It's the firstborn portion. But we see so often it's the second one. This wasn't the first Adam, it was the second Adam. It wasn't Esau. It wasn't, as you go through this, there's a lot of seconds, and I didn't have a chance to go ahead and study that through more, but, I looked at it, I thought, that's interesting that he would bring that out here. I don't know if that was in his mind or how it was in his mind, but it certainly would come out. Because then we see patience. Now, what about patience? What do we know about patience here? What does patience look like if you were to look at this? What does he say about it? He's calm. He's quiet. Right? That's what he says. He says, passion seemed to be much discontented, but patience was very quiet. That's how he describes. It's kind of interesting. Oh, okay. Patience is very quiet. And so I thought to myself, man, am I quiet? Am I quiet? I guess the jury is still out on that as I reflect myself. I think it's the quiet of the heart, the stillness of the heart, as opposed to the loudness and that's often associated with passion. This is more just, settle down as we're going through this. On this page here, the next interchange, he says, then said Christian, now I see that patience has the best wisdom. The best wisdom. So Christians should be able to, and you probably have in your mind, he brings up the bird in the hand is worth two in the bush kind of idea. We have to fight through that, don't we, on a regular basis. It is something that we have to fight through. But I think God gives us grace as we do it, and I don't want to say it gets easy. It does get easier and easier. I guess I will say that. I think it does get easier and easier. As you fight through the flesh, and we kind of see that at the end of the whole thing, fighting through the flesh and fighting through that discontent, the spirit of discontentment. Sometimes the spirit of discontentment is okay, I think, when you're discontent for the right reasons, which can happen as well, right? You could have the spirit of discontentment, and it's not always wrong. Sometimes it's right, because things are wrong. So you should be discontented with things that are wrong. Does that make sense? So I think this discontentment gets a bad rap, but it's not always necessarily bad, I guess. I wanted to say that. But, go ahead, Nate.
5 years ago, I was discontent with the depth of the teaching at the Presbyterian Church in my neighborhood, and now I'm here.
Yeah, amen.
In fact, I think it was Daniel when he was pastor. Maybe it was you who mentioned it, but I think it was Daniel who specifically mentioned the spirit of discontentment when I was talking with him about not really being satisfied with how shallow the teaching was over there.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So, and the men know this fella. I'm thinking of a fella who's not a part of our church, but he comes to the men's meeting. He's a personal friend. We used to work together. And he goes to the other campus of that church, of Good News Church.
Nothing about the other campus.
Right. But since they're, campus churches of the same stripe, in theory, there should be the same, in theory. And the one was started by the other, I believe. So you would think that, they practice and teach all that same stuff. And he's been going there a long time. A long time. And he asked me questions that a babe should be able to know the answers to these questions. And we're talking 20 years of going to church there. And I'm like, I haven't said anything outright to him. But I think to myself, man, what are they doing over there? How come you don't know anything? And I've challenged him on his salvation on a number of times, and I could see he gets visibly uncomfortable. And so I think he's thinking things through. And yesterday he asked me, well, I've been thinking about what you said, and I want to make sure I'm doing enough for my family and for those around me to talk about what's happening and what they need to do, and because I really believe now these are the end times, and so he's now convinced, and I'm thinking that should have been the outflow as soon as you got saved, and that your burden. I don't know about you, but as soon as I got saved, first thing I did start call my brothers and sisters, writing letters to people. That was. That's what happened to me. And I've heard testimonies of others that the same kind of thing happens. And so, Charles, you had that marked Bible yesterday, right? He starts talking to me, and it's just a little bit of a sidetrack, but I'll bring it around in a minute. And he's like, if I only knew, I'm just no good at this. I'm like, well, that's really, from the Bible's perspective, that's not an excuse. You don't have an excuse to say or think I'm just not going to. No, it doesn't work like that. You never are going to. None of us are. It's the God who, resides in us now. And you have a testimony, right? You can certainly talk to people about, but if I had to, I'm like, well, they have tools for those things, and I showed them how my Bible, I don't do it as much now, because now things are more committed to memory. But when I first got saved, I don't know if I've written in this one. I write all the time. You guys see me writing all the time. But in these first couple of pages here, this one doesn't have it. So in my other Bibles, the first couple of pages right here, there'd be like a couple of blank pages. And I would write, when I first got saved, okay, salvation, and I'd start listening. Every time I heard a verse, I'd write the verse address down, or whatever it was, alcohol, I'd write the verse, whatever, all of those things that when I was first saved, I'd write those addresses in. If you grab some of my old Bibles, you'll see, all this in there. And I was like, well, I was telling them, you should be doing that so that you know where the verses are. And then I thought to myself, well, wait, I said, you saw the what Charles had in his hand. I said, that's a marked Bible. He looked at me like, well, what's that? I'm like, it's a marked Bible. It goes through, the Romans road, the basic way to lead someone. Now that would help. So I went and got it. He texted me this morning, said, that's the answer, the things I've been praying for years. That was the answer. So that was the text I got from him this morning. So he must have went home and went through it. I showed him how to use it, took him through a couple of the verses so that he could see how that works. And then first thing this morning, he had texted, that was it. So hopefully, the Lord is doing something there. But I go back to, that kind of patience is not necessarily a good kind of patience. Yes, exactly. It's a sense of, I was thinking apathy, but maybe you might be more right. I don't know. It just depends on how we understand those situations. That, he's content to come to church, sit there, and not grow. not know that he's not even growing, thinking, because I mean, the Genesis record, I taught, Jazzy, you might have even been in there when I was teaching through Genesis at the college. And, it's a big, thick book, the Genesis record by Morris. And a few years back, he says, oh, yeah, I read that book. I'm like, that's not a book you just read through. It's not one of those kind of books. Not like this, not like Pilgrim's Progress. He's like, oh, yeah, I read the whole thing. It's kind of interesting, I'll come to, but doesn't seem to be growing. And I think that's where, to me, it reinforces Corinthians, spiritual things are spiritually discerned, concerned about his salvation. Yes, he could be picking things up, but it's not spiritual, it's intellectual. And so, moving on with that. All right, so he says here, then said Christian, now I see that patience has the best wisdom and that upon many accounts. And he lists a couple things here, right? He says, because he stays for the best things. And then he says, and also because he will have the glory of his when the other has nothing but rags. But then he says a third thing. What's the third thing that the interpreter goes ahead and points out to him? It's right there. Yeah, it says, nay, you may add another to the witness. The glory of the next word will never wear out. All right, so, but these are suddenly gone. So there's a difference. The truth is always going to be the truth, and it's never going to wear out. Worldliness or a false sense of truth or a false sense of security or a false sense of peace, they always wear out. They get replaced by the next false sense of truth or false sense of security, false sense of whatever. But the truth never wears out. And there's only one place to find the truth. We all know that. And so he says, therefore passion had not so much reason to laugh at patience, which is what normally happens, right? Those people that are worldly say, oh, you guys are so foolish. You guys are, religious superstition, blah, 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 right? That's what the world says. When it says, patience will have to laugh at patience will have to laugh at passion because he had the best things last. Because he had the best things last. For first must give place to last. So, for us, how does this play out in our everyday walkabout life? How do you do keeping patience front and center and passion maybe under control? I mean, how does that proceed in our lives? And you know what? Let's just go to Luke 16. It's probably better to just look at that, because this is where he brings in Luke 16. Not that much scripture in this. I think the intent is to spend a little more time in it, the ones that are here. But Luke 16. Right, so verse 19 starts the rich man and Lazarus, because he quotes here, he says, therefore instead of dives, in thy lifetime thou receivest thy good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things, but now he is comforted and thou art tormented. And that is kind of the end. I don't know, should have marked that in my Bible. 25, I was just going to say, I'm right at about there. Right, so verse 25, but Abraham said, Son, Remember that thou in thy lifetime receivest thy good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things, but now he is comforted and thou art tormented. This is it's one of those love and hate kind of things. I hate the fact that he brings up his his brothers. What is it? 5 brothers. How does he say how many he has? 5 brothers. So I think of my 9 brothers and sisters, and I'm very sympathetic to this passage. And any of you who came out from an unchristian family, I wasn't raised Christian. Consequently, none of my siblings are Christians to my knowledge. I have 2 sisters that are devoted Catholics, hook, line, and sinker. The one sent all of her kids to Catholic school, worked at the school for 30 years, just retired. The one son is a minister, he's not a priest. He's married with several beautiful children, but they're all in. And I think to myself, I through this section right here, I think to myself how sad that is. And what is it that I can do about the whole thing? It says here they have what? What's the answer? What do we count on as the answer here? Yeah. This is it. They have Abraham and the prophets, meaning they have this book. Catholics have the same book. It's a little different, and obviously things that are different are not the same, so I'm using that in the sense that I got saved holding my Catholic study Bible, so I do believe you can get saved out of, mine was a Dewey Reams. I don't know what the newest version is now in terms of their where they're at, but I do believe you can get saved out of it.
Well, yeah, so the Catholic Bible, of course, has extra books.
Lots of extra books.
As scriptural, and they have other things and traditions, but the people that it's being talked about to in this verse, they have Moses and the prophets, right? They have the law.
The law.
Prophets.
Yep.
They also had their own additional things that they read from. Like the Jews of this time, they had their own additional
Yes.
biblical traditions and mythologies. But the fact that they had the law and the prophets, that's enough.
That's enough. Yes. And so that's where it's like, okay, they have the word, and the best thing we could do is quote this, use this, example this, our own, not conversion because we're already converted, but transformation. That was the word I was looking for. As we're transformed, we evidence the truth of this and hold it out before them. Christian here says, then I perceive it is not best to covet things that are now, but to wait for things to come. Why is, we could look at things and appear to be complacent when we're not, because we have a vision of the things to come. We recognize that, we use the word hope, all right? And other than when we're calling for hope, as a confident expectation, because we believe in this, right? And because we believe in that, then that allows us to be patient, or what appears to be patient. Sometimes we're not all that patient, are we? I probably said this more than a couple of times, but I stopped praying for patience because I don't like the way he teaches me. Oftentimes, it's a hard lesson. And it involves me having to deal with something that I really didn't want to have to deal with. And that's how he tends to go ahead and help me with this. And I know it's a help. I mean, I say this kind of tongue-in-cheek because I know you guys have your own battles that you all face with whatever it is that you're battling with, or at least you ought to. You ought to be in the battle. But that's one of those ones where, that I have a little bit of that passion fella in me that I want to, I want it now. I want to move forward. Why can't I get this now? Why can't I have better command of that? Why can't I do these things? So you can see these. They're not always bad. I think oftentimes we're tempted to think that, but that's not the case. So we just have to be careful with that, I think, as we move forward. But let's keep going here. So interpreter, he recognizes, okay, Christian, yep, you got it. Yep, you got it. But though this be so, yet, these words that speak of timing on things. Though this be so, yet, since things in present and our fleshly appetite are such near neighbors. I love the way he wrote this. I had to underline this, even though I it's not that it's a big deal. Our fleshly appetites are such near neighbors that things present and our appetites are such near neighbors to one another. Just the wording itself, just so clever for a guy who never went to school. I mean, ever. And is self-taught to learn to just read and write in this time frame. It is kind of amazing. You'd almost think that God had a hand in it, and I'm not suggesting he's inspired, so don't get crazy on me. It's not where I'm going. But it wouldn't, if God is in fact working in his heart, well, there is some of that coming through, I think, in how this all works. All right, so before we lose all sense of time here, the fire. I want to look at the fire here. Mine is not quite the same as yours, so I didn't mark it as well as I should have. Then I saw in a dream that the interpreter took Christian by the hand and led him into the place where was a fire burning against a wall, and one standing by it, always casting much water upon it. Who is that? Who? The devil? Why is he casting water? I mean, you would think water against the fire would be a good thing. What's the issue here? What's the issue?
Fire is the work of grace wrought in us.
Okay.
Us being on fire for Jesus.
Okay. Because with the word passion in the same section, it could be, well, wait, that fire and the passion, it's not. You gotta read through this. I think this might have been why I had a harder time reading through this after I had just gotten saved, because I couldn't see all that. But the water is meant to quench the fire of God's grace in our lives. And yet it did, the fire burn higher and hotter, it says. I love that. Okay, Satan, you can go ahead and try to do that, and all it does is make it hotter and higher. The more we recognize Satan's effort in our lives, the more we love God for the grace that he bestows in our lives. We get more on fire. I don't think it's an accident that he chose this very thing to go ahead and represent that. And I love how it's the two parts, right? In the heart. He that casts water upon it to extinguish it and put it out is the devil. But he that seeth the fire, notwithstanding, burn higher and hotter, provide more grace still. And in that thou seest that the man stood behind the wall to maintain the fire. Who is that? That's Christ himself. That's Christ himself. This is to teach thee that it is hard for the tempted to see how the work of grace is maintained in the soul, because they can only see from the one side. They don't have the two-sided view of Christ working that Christians have, that we as believers have. God, you see the Satan throwing water on it, trying to get the fire out, and Christ bestowing oil on it to go ahead and crank the fire up. Nate?
You know, it's funny. I was thinking about it. What's the one thing you're never supposed to do with the grease fire?
Throw more grease on it.
Throw water on it.
Throw water. That's right.
Because then
It goes.
psst,
That's right. It makes a bigger fire. That's right. That's absolutely true.
There's an application there.
Yeah.
Being fed with the oil from Jesus.
Yes.
Water just increases our fire.
Amen. That's a great point. I love that point. While Satan is doing that same work, and he's thinking he's accomplishing it, and we see it in the early church. The more they tried to extinguish the early church, all they did was hasten the spread of the early church. People had to get out of Dodge, or in this case, Jerusalem, and so where did they go? Everywhere. So they took the gospel with them everywhere. So God used that very thing. That was a good catch there, Nate, about the water being splashed like that. It is the same. I think we see the same kind of thing. Is that what it's called? I don't know, but okay. How about one of those safety blankets? You got a safety blanket at the house to go ahead and throw in the fire? No. Kyra got one, hung it up in the parsonage. I don't know if there was a fire, if I'd be mindful enough to go ahead and do that. Then said Christian, may we go in thither. What is he talking about here? He also saw upon the top thereof certain persons walking who were clothed all in gold. He saw some commotion going on. May we go in thither. Tell me what's going to happen here. Tell me what is this talking about? You got armed men, you got things going on. He leaves this right here, and then he kind of leaves this hanging at the very end. Nay, say the interpreter, till I have showed thee a little more, and after that thou shalt go on thy way. Nate, what's he talking about here?
It looked to me like a man trying to get in the gate and get his name written down. Sounds like salvation.
I was thinking the same thing. And what's he willing to do? Yeah. There's got to be a recognition. Now, this could be confusing for us, like we have a part in this whole thing. This is where, we got to be somewhat wise to the whole thing. We cannot save ourselves. Would that be a true statement? Right? But we could certainly do things and live a certain way where God's grace can go ahead and, as he draws us, what was that verse? Well, outside of John 6:44, which I use all the time, except the Father draw us, but what was John at 12:32? Don Anderson, go ahead, Nate. Sounds like you know it better than I do. Right, so God is going to go ahead. He will draw all men unto him. I believe all means all, right? Not just a selected few. But not all are willing to go ahead and do what it's going to take, right? We know this. Otherwise, we should have a building that should seat 500 right over here in this pasture. But we don't. Because people aren't willing to go ahead and do that. It looks hard. I'm going to have to sacrifice. oh, I'm going to have to give things up. Oh, I'm not going to be with my friends anymore. That was a hard one. Um, that was more after the fact for me. Oh, I'm not with my friends. And that's true. All the friends that we had before salvation, we don't have. You know, the people we hung around with, the people at work, all of that just, those folks, when you go ahead and tell them of your new relationship with the Lord and you want to share it, then they don't want to participate in that. We have very few of those friends, even now just a casual acquaintance that you would even talk to from 25, 30 years ago. When we used to do things with a lot of folks. I mean, I don't know about you. Guess it depends on where you got when you got saved. If you got saved as an older person, then you would have had a whole of those friends. If you got saved as a younger person, you never experienced those types of friendships, or at least not to the same level. And so, yeah. Acts 14:22, if someone could turn to that.
Confirming the souls of the disciples and exhorting them to continue in the faith, and that we must, through much tribulation, enter into the kingdom of God.
Yeah. And that's kind of the image, I think, that he's trying to present with this. There's got to be, there's plenty of hills to get over just to go ahead and get saved, and then you just got to be fighting it right along.
I feel like maybe you're overlooking the man with the book, because it says, there also sat a man at a little distance from the door.
Yes.
With the book and his inkhorn before him, to take the names of them that should enter therein.
Right.
And so the guy gets his name written down. The guy asks to have his name written down.
Right.
That's the answer of the good conscience toward God.
Yes.
Asking for salvation. Once he gets his name written down,
He's going in. Yeah, he's going in. Yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. The whole, what does it say? The inkhorn before him, to take the names of them that should enter therein. It's kind of interesting because it's, when you talk about having your name in the book of life, I was taught that we start that way with our names in the book of life. And then you see your name taken out of the book of life at some point, and I've never quite understood, this is me as an early Christian, and it was like, well, why is that way? Because then we're told, is your name written down in the book of life? I'm like, wait a minute, we end with our names in the book. If we always started with our names in the book of life, it's a little confusing. I think. At some point, it's not so much whether you know Jesus, it's whether he knows you. At some point, that's the difference. Satan and the demons know God and know Jesus. Their names are not written down. People that, excuse me, that are not saved are not going to be in that book. They're in another set of books, right? Because if we go to Revelation chapter 20, I think, where the names are the books, the book is going to be able, and the books. So I'm envisioning like a giant library of books that are going to have all this stuff. And maybe it's something else nowadays. Now, if you're in with AI or something else like that, you might think, oh, that's how he's going to do it, and that's just a picture of what that's going to look like. I'd like to think it's just going to be plain old books. That's kind of how I'm going to keep thinking that way until God tells me something different. Did you find it yet, Nate?
Revelation,
Yeah,
Revelation 20, starting in verse 11. And I
verse
saw
11.
a great white throne and him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books, plural,
Yep.
were opened. And another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books, according to their works. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them. And they were judged every man according to their works. And death and hell were cast into the lake of the fire. This is the second death. And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire.
The book of life. So you got to make sure, and I'm assuming everybody's name here is in that book, because you don't want God to have to pull out the other books on that dreadful day. And I pray we have no part of that we don't see any or hear any part of that. And maybe we'll be outfitted in such a way to be able to deal with that. At some point, he's going to dry up all tears. There's a sense of when we finally meet the Lord on that judgment day at Corinthians, every knee shall bow, every tongue shall confess. We will go ahead and experience both rewards and a sense of loss. And I've often dwelt on how does the loss figure into things. If I'm in heaven, aren't I going to grieve this loss? And I mean, why is it mentioned that it's an issue if there's not going to be something that we're struggling with, but yet we're in heaven? How could that possibly work? And so my fail-safe with the whole thing is, well, he's going to dry up all tears. You might experience that sense of loss there. Well, you will experience a sense of loss there because he says it's going to happen. So this is not, oh, you don't got this right, Pastor. No, this is going to happen. We will experience a sense of loss as we experience rewards. And if we experience it in the way that we commonly think about, experience a sense of loss like, oh, man, I wish, I could have. Steve, did I see your hand go up?
Yeah. About the loss thing, I'm thinking what he's saying about that is that you're going to be seeing friends and relatives being cast in the lake of fire, the ones that didn't accept to be saved. And you're going to see that. And then afterwards, he's going to dry your tears up. He's going to remove them from your memory. You're not going to think about it. And that's what I'm thinking it's about.
Well, I think the text is talking about an accounting of our lives.
Well, that too. I mean,
right? So the accounting of our lives is, all right, what did you do for the cause of Christ? So there's where the rewards come, and my sense would be it's probably where you get your crowns at that time as rewards that you're going to go ahead and give back. And so the sense of loss, there's got to be a real sense of loss. Otherwise, why would God put that there? So there's some, for us, it's to be mindful of the fact that we will experience that sense of loss. But that's a whole nother thing. But I'm enjoying the text. This chapter had some good beef in it, and I think the next one is going to answer some more questions. But our time's gone. Let's go ahead. Let's close. Father, we thank you for your book, the Bible. And Lord, there's just so many things I look forward to continuing to learn about. And I just desire to know more about you. And I'm content, Lord, to go ahead and be patient and wait. And that comes from you, and I know that just as sure as I'm standing here. Because I remember who I was and who I'm still tempted to be from time to time. And so I'm thankful for your grace in my life, just as we see here between passion and patience. And I pray for each one of us here, Lord, that we'd enjoy a very similar position, recognizing your grace taking care of us, and that we're not tempted to go ahead and act in the here and now for an immediate sense of fulfillment or contentment, but that we'd have the long game in mind. And it's going to take you. We see that. The world wants us to go ahead and be pulled away, but the image that we see here of Christ and the oil and just feeding the grace, Lord, we thank you for that. We thank you for that in our lives. And I pray we take that lesson with us as we go on today. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.